The smell of overcooked tater tots and sour mop water hung in the air of Lincoln High like a stale memory that never quite faded. Lockers slammed shut, shoes squeaked on polished linoleum, and voices echoed down the hallways in a messy harmony of teen chaos. Ethan Cooper walked with his head slightly down, backpack sagging off one shoulder, the straps frayed from years of overuse. 17, tall but slouched, Ethan moved like someone who hoped the world wouldn't notice him. His jeans had a permanent coffee stain near the knee, and his hoodie was 2 winters too old. He had one pair of shoes, gray from time and dirt, soles barely hanging on. Home wasn't any better, a cramped apartment shared with his mom, who worked double shifts as a nurse, and his younger brother, Tyler, whose asthma kept Ethan up half the night. Money was a ghost in their household, always mentioned, never seen. They didn't talk about dreams, not out loud. But Ethan had them. At night, when the world dimmed and his mother finally fell asleep on the couch with the TV humming in the background, Ethan would sketch in his notebook. Not cartoons or random doodles. Designs. Apps, games, a streaming platform he believed could change how people shared ideas. Pages filled with wireframes and handwritten code concepts, ideas that felt like stars just out of reach. But that day, Wednesday mid-October, would carve itself into Ethan's memory like a scar. "All right, let's begin presentations," said Mr. Richardson, his voice sharp, clipped, always just 1 decibel too loud. A former debate coach turned English teacher, Richardson ruled room 214 with an iron marker. His tie always too tight, hair slicked back like he was starring in a high school reboot of Wall Street. And that smirk, God, that smirk, never left his face. Ethan's stomach churned. He adjusted the USB in his hoodie pocket, fingers trembling. His project, the Idea Hub, was a concept for an app that let teens anonymously share innovations. Ideas for change, for tech, for art, without judgment. He'd worked on it for 3 weeks straight, skipping sleep, researching after school, perfecting every slide. "Cooper," Richardson barked. "You're up." The class snickered. Someone whispered, "Get ready for nap time." Ethan walked to the front, plugged in the USB, and the projector flickered to life. First slide. Bold, clean title. His voice shook at first, but he pressed forward. "This is Idea Hub. It's a safe space where young minds can share innovative thoughts without fear of mockery or exposure. Anonymity meets creativity." He explained the basic interface, how users would upvote ideas, give constructive feedback, and collaborate. He talked about using basic machine learning to filter toxic language and troll behavior. That's when the laughter started. Not all at once. It began like static, tiny buzzing growing. A chuckle here. A whispered insult there. Richardson held up a hand, silencing the room. He walked toward the screen and pointed at one of Ethan's mock-ups. "So this is what you think qualifies as innovation?" he asked, voice laced with disbelief. "You think you're going to compete with Silicon Valley from your what bedroom?" Ethan's throat tightened. "I'm sorry, but this is a glorified message board with bad fonts and no real structure. And let's be honest, if you had what it takes to build something worthwhile, your grades wouldn't be circling the drain." A few gasps. A ripple of snickers. "But," Ethan started, heart pounding. "But nothing," Richardson cut in. "I've been teaching 20 years. I can tell who's going somewhere, and who's going nowhere. And Ethan, you better get real comfortable with the second one." Silence. Crushing, merciless silence. Ethan stood frozen, every molecule in his body screaming to vanish. Richardson gave a final sigh, like someone disappointed in a used car purchase, and waved him off. "Sit down, Cooper." Next. Ethan unplugged his USB slowly, like pulling a blade out of his own chest. He returned to his seat, each step heavier than the last. His hands trembled, but he shoved them in his pockets. His face burned. He didn't dare look at anyone. The projector flickered to the next presentation, someone babbling about Shakespeare. But Ethan couldn't hear it, couldn't see it. His world had shrunk to a tunnel. That night he didn't touch his notebook. He didn't sketch. He didn't sleep. He just laid there, headphones in, letting the noise drown the shame. Richardson's words played on repeat in his head like a broken record. "Going nowhere. You better get real comfortable with that." The next morning, he woke up late. His mother yelled from the kitchen, "Ethan, you missed your bus?" He didn't care. The idea of walking into that school, into that room, felt like walking into a lion's den wearing a meat suit. When he finally showed up for fifth period, Richardson didn't even glance his way. It was worse than mockery. He'd become invisible. At lunch, Ethan sat alone. A group of seniors passed by, and one of them whispered, "There goes Zuckerberg light." He smiled. The kind of smile people wear to keep from crumbling. As the weeks went by, Ethan went through the motions. Grades slipped further. He stopped raising his hand. Stopped bringing up ideas. Every time he picked up his pencil, that voice echoed, "If you had what it takes." He began to believe it. One evening, he overheard his mother talking to someone on the phone. "I worry about him," she whispered. "He doesn't talk anymore. Just stares. Like he's somewhere else." Ethan sat on the hallway floor, back against the wall, feeling like a ghost in his own life. But pain is a funny thing. Sometimes it buries you. Other times, it plants you. The turning point came not from hope, but rage. A month after the presentation debacle, Richardson handed back essays. Red ink everywhere. On Ethan's, scrawled in the margin, "Still waiting for signs of intelligent life." That night, something broke. He stared at the paper for hours. At the insult. At the indifference. And then he got up. He pulled out his old notebook, wiped the dust from the cover, and turned to a fresh page. He didn't sketch. He didn't design. He wrote one sentence over and over, until the pen ran dry. "I will prove him wrong." Again. And again. "I will prove him wrong." He didn't tell his mom. Didn't tell anyone. But something shifted inside. The quiet boy with stained jeans and frayed notebooks was done waiting for approval. He wasn't going to fade. He wasn't going to settle. He wouldn't let one man's bitterness define his blueprint. Because deep down, beyond the shame and the scars, Ethan Cooper still believed. Not in himself, not yet. But in the fire. In the anger. And sometimes, that's enough to start a revolution. In his mind, he pictured standing on a stage, the same idea on a screen, except now the laughter was gone. Replaced by applause. Recognition. Respect. In the vision, someone in the crowd looked familiar. Mr. Richardson. Only this time, he was the one speechless. Ethan closed his notebook and whispered, "You were wrong about me." Then louder, "You were so wrong." That night, Ethan didn't sleep much. But for the first time in weeks, he didn't mind. Because now he wasn't dreaming. He was planning. The silence after Ethan's vow wasn't peaceful. It was electric. It hummed like thunderclouds gathering in his chest. He didn't wake up the next day full of fire and determination. He woke up the same. Tired, sore from the cheap mattress, heavy from the weight of expectations nobody had ever placed on him. Except himself. But that whisper he made to the dark, to no one in particular, "I will prove him wrong," clung to his ribs like a second heartbeat. The change wasn't cinematic. No swelling music, no montage. Just cold mornings, crowded buses, and a decision again and again, not to quit. He started with what he had. An ancient desktop in the school library. Slow enough to test his patience, loud enough to draw stares. Ethan didn't care. While other students scrolled endlessly or whispered about parties, he opened tabs filled with JavaScript tutorials, open-source communities, and UI/UX design videos. He didn't understand most of it at first. But he kept watching. He kept scribbling notes in the same frayed notebook where his dreams lived. He began stealing minutes from every part of the day. 10 minutes before class. 30 after school. Weekends at the public library. Late nights using the school's Wi-Fi from the sidewalk outside its locked doors. His fingers moved faster now. Not always accurately but more confidently. When Mr. Richardson passed by his desk in class and saw lines of code on Ethan's screen, he smirked and muttered, "Still playing pretend, huh?" Ethan didn't flinch. Not anymore. Every insult became oxygen to the quiet fire building inside him. His home life didn't ease up either. His mother's shifts got longer. Tyler's asthma got worse. One night, Ethan sat up with his little brother, rubbing his back as he wheezed into a nebulizer. The hum of the machine syncing with the rise and fall of his chest. That was the moment Ethan realized. This wasn't just about revenge. It wasn't just about proving Richardson wrong. It was about making sure no one he loved ever had to feel this powerless again. He got a part-time job at the gas station down the block. Minimum wage. Mostly sweeping floors, cleaning up oil spills, and dodging rude customers. He hid his bruised ego behind polite nods and cracked knuckles. During slow hours, he scribbled code ideas on the back of receipts and candy boxes. And then came the flyer. A local tech competition, Build the Future, Youth Edition. Sponsored by a regional startup incubator. Open to high school students only. First prize, $2,000 and a summer internship with a real dev team. Ethan stared at it for a long time. His first instinct was to crumple it up and toss it. He wasn't good enough. He wasn't ready. But then he saw Richardson's red ink again in his mind. Still waiting for signs of intelligent life. And something in his chest said, apply. He stayed up 3 nights in a row refining his old Idea Hub concept. He stripped it down, rebuilt it, cleaned the UI, wrote a stronger pitch. He filmed a demo using borrowed recording software, and edited it on the school's clunky iMac that crashed every hour like clockwork. He submitted it 10 minutes before the deadline, palms sweaty, heart beating like a war drum. And then he waited. 3 weeks passed. He got the email on a rainy Wednesday. His hands shook as he clicked it open. We regret to inform you. He didn't finish reading. The words blurred. His eyes burned. He blinked hard, swallowed, and closed the laptop. He'd lost. He sat on the steps of the school that night. Hoodie pulled over his head, backpack at his feet, rain seeping into his sneakers. It felt like everything Richardson had said was true. He was never going to be anything. Just then Mr. Jacobs, the janitor, pushed open the front doors. A kind, quiet man who had watched Ethan spend hours alone in that computer lab. You okay, kid? Jacobs asked, holding the door open. Ethan nodded, though he wasn't sure why. Jacobs hesitated, then said, you know, failure's not the end, right? Sometimes it's just the middle part. Ethan didn't reply. But those words dug deep. He went home. He didn't sleep. Again. But this time, instead of wallowing, he opened the email again. Scrolled down. And that's when he saw it. A handwritten note in the feedback section from one of the judges. You're onto something. Don't stop. Just 5 words. But they split the darkness like lightning. He wasn't just a joke to everyone. Someone with power, someone with vision, saw potential. He printed that line and taped it above his desk, right beside Richardson's quote. Still waiting for signs of intelligent life. You're onto something. Don't stop. He looked at both. Every morning. Every night. That summer, he walked 5 miles to a community center that offered free computer access. He built the second version of Idea Hub. Cleaner. Sharper. Better logic. He added an anonymous feedback module, a ranking system, a moderation algorithm. He even pitched it to a few college students he met online in developer forums. Some responded. Most ignored him. One replied, interesting. Not quite scalable yet. But I'd love to see where this goes. By senior year, he had a working prototype. Not just an idea. Not just a sketch. An actual, functioning platform. He applied to 4 colleges. Rejected by 3. The 4th, a small tech-focused school in Colorado, accepted him with a partial scholarship. He didn't care that it wasn't a name-brand school. He didn't care that he'd be working 2 jobs to survive there. He got in. The day he packed for college, his mother hugged him tighter than she ever had. I always knew you were special, she whispered, eyes wet. He didn't believe it then. But he let her say it. College was brutal. Everyone seemed richer, smarter, better. Ethan showed up with 1 duffel bag, 2 pairs of jeans, and his old beat-up laptop with a cracked screen. While roommates joined fraternities and partied, Ethan delivered pizzas, cleaned bathrooms, and worked nights at a 24-hour diner. But every spare hour went into Idea Hub. He renamed it Linklift, rebranded it, redesigned it, submitted it to small startup competitions. Lost again. And again. But then at 20, he won his first one. $5,000 and a mentorship with a software engineer who used to work at Google. That changed everything. The mentor taught him how to scale, how to pitch, how to think like a founder. Together, They rebuilt Linklift into a fully scalable beta platform. By 21, he pitched it at a national tech conference. Nervous, shaking, stammering, but he did it. By 22, investors came knocking. He didn't accept the first offer. Or the second. He waited. Built leverage. When he finally signed the deal, $300,000 in seed funding, he cried on the bathroom floor for an hour. Not out of joy. Out of exhaustion. And then he got back to work. At 25, Linklift hit 1 million users. The press came calling. Forbes ran a story. The dropout who built a platform for the silenced voices. They asked about his inspiration. He didn't talk about Richardson. Not yet. He talked about his mother, his brother, the notebook, the pain, the silence. But the fire had never died. It was time to come home. He returned to his city, not for recognition, but for closure. He drove past Lincoln High. It looked the same yet smaller, less intimidating. He drove to the address listed on a house for sale his assistant had found. Nice neighborhood. Brick house. Well-kept yard. Price, $480,000. The name on the seller's info? James Richardson. He hadn't taught in 3 years. Early retirement. Rumors of burnout. No one knew exactly why. Ethan scheduled a tour through a realtor. Richardson didn't recognize him at first. The sharp suit. The car. The calm confidence. But when Ethan looked him in the eye and said, "Mr. Richardson, do you remember me?" Richardson froze. There was silence. A long one. Finally he said, "Cooper?" Ethan nodded. Richardson's face twisted with something like disbelief. Or guilt. Ethan just smiled. "I'm buying your house." He didn't gloat. Didn't laugh. He just handed over the signed papers. As Richardson stood there, speechless, hollow, Ethan said the words he'd waited years to say. "You were wrong about me." Then he turned and walked away. He didn't look back. The air outside the train station was thick with heat, the kind that made every breath feel heavy and deliberate. I stepped out with a duffel bag slung over one shoulder, cheap leather peeling along the seams, filled with everything I owned that mattered. Not much, honestly. A few books, a cracked laptop, 2 changes of clothes, and a journal. I clutched it like a lifeline. New York City, loud, overwhelming, endlessly moving. And here I was, 18, broke, and carrying nothing but raw defiance and a mind full of bruises. I didn't have a place yet. Just a bunk at some shared hostel that reeked of ambition and ramen. I remember my mother crying that morning, lips trembling as she handed me $200, all she could spare. "This world doesn't care about dreamers," she said quietly, "but sometimes, that's what makes them win." Her voice echoed through my bones as I walked past honking taxis and neon signs. I didn't know how I'd make it. I just knew I would. Because he had told me I wouldn't. Mr. Carter's voice still lived in my mind like a permanent tenant. "You. Success?" He had laughed when I mentioned my dream of becoming an entrepreneur. "Kid, you'll be lucky to hold a job flipping burgers." I'd replayed that scene 100 times. My hands clenched under the desk, heart hammering like a drum in my chest as my classmates chuckled. That smirk. That smug, hollow smirk. No. I wouldn't let him win. I didn't know what winning looked like yet, but I would find it. I promised myself that. The first month in the city nearly broke me. I took whatever work I could find. Dishwashing in a Korean restaurant, handing out flyers in Times Square, even mopping the floor at a bookstore after midnight. I barely slept. When I did, it was under the flicker of hostile lights and the rhythmic snoring of strangers. Still, every free second I read. Books about marketing, psychology, product design, storytelling. I devoured every free online course I could find. I scribbled ideas in my journal. Wild ideas. Some dumb. Some decent. A few promising. One evening, while folding menus at a diner, I watched a teenager fumble with her phone charger. Her frustration loud and visible. Her wire was bent, chewed up from months of wear. And that was it. That tiny spark. An idea. What if I created an affordable, stylish phone charger protector? Something fun, maybe even customizable. I stayed up that night sketching designs, listing materials, sourcing manufacturers from China through Alibaba. I didn't have startup capital, but I had persistence. And caffeine. I started selling on Etsy, just 3 units at first, made by hand. I wrapped each one carefully, scribbled thank you notes by hand, and even added small keychains to make it personal. 2 orders became 10. 10 became 100. A video of a TikTok user showing off my product went viral overnight. Suddenly, I wasn't folding menus anymore. I was negotiating with bulk suppliers, learning shipping logistics, building a brand. I named it FlexiLoop. It was simple, cheap, relatable, and suddenly it was everywhere. But success doesn't come without shadows. I was still living off peanut butter sandwiches, still walking miles to save subway fare. Every cent went back into the business. I wanted to quit sometimes, when orders got delayed, when customers yelled over broken deliveries, when packages went missing, when a batch came back defective. Still, I kept going. Every mistake became a lesson. Every night I whispered, not for him, for me. But that was a lie. It was for him. For Mr. Carter. For every teacher, every neighbor, every kid in class who had sneered. One night, around 2 a.m., I looked at my sales dashboard. $10,000 in one day. I stared at the screen for what felt like hours. Not out of joy, but disbelief. I was becoming something. By my 21st birthday, FlexiLoop had its own warehouse space in Jersey. 5 employees. 1 part-time accountant. And I finally moved into a tiny studio, no longer bunking with bedbugs and broken heaters. But the deeper truth? I still felt like that kid in the second-hand hoodie. The one who had sat alone during lunch. The one whose science fair project got laughed at. The one who had written essays soaked in dreams, and watched them bleed red from Mr. Carter's pen. I started therapy. Not for healing. Not yet. But for understanding. Success had arrived, but the wounds hadn't closed. I told my therapist once, if he had just said nothing, I might have still succeeded. But because he mocked me, I couldn't rest until I proved him wrong. She looked at me, soft and knowing. You realize that means he still owns space in your life? I nodded. Yeah. But someday, I'll own something he cares about. Years passed like pages flipping fast. I diversified. Launched 2 new brands. One failed miserably, a Bluetooth pen that nobody wanted. The other, a minimalist tech accessories line, exploded on Kickstarter. Now I was 25. Young, rich, but still angry. I flew back home for the first time in 6 years. My mother's hair had turned grayer. Her hands a little slower. But her eyes sparkled when I hugged her. A rare kind of pride blooming behind her glasses. We drove through the old neighborhood, past the broken playground, the rusted basketball court, the same corner store where I'd once begged for loose change to buy ramen. And then we passed the school. Millbrook High. A punch to the gut. I hadn't set foot there since graduation. Didn't plan to. But something pulled me. The building looked smaller now. Older. Like it too, had grown tired of dreams dying inside it. I walked through the main gates. Nobody stopped me. The secretary looked up, distracted, then waved me through when I said I was an alumni guest. Room 204. His room. The door was open. Empty. Dust floated in the slanted afternoon sunlight. But the memories weren't dusted. They stormed back. That project presentation where he humiliated me. The parent-teacher conference he used to tell my mother I lacked intellectual curiosity. The paper he handed back with a fat red D, smirking. That man had crushed parts of me no grades ever measured. I walked out, hands shaking. And as I stepped outside, I heard a voice. Excuse me? You were in there a while. Looking for someone. It was the janitor. An older man, kind eyes. I had Carter back in the day, I said cautiously. The janitor snorted. That old snake finally retired last summer. I blinked. Really? Yup. Moved out last month. Sold his place too. Big house up on Redwood Lane. Can't afford the taxes anymore, I guess. I paused. Redwood Lane. The janitor nodded. House with the blue porch and the willow tree. You can't miss it. That night, I couldn't sleep. I Googled the address. And there it was, 14 Redwood Lane. A gorgeous 2-story home with wide windows, a wraparound porch, and a willow tree out front exactly like he said. And it was listed. Price reduced. Motivated seller. I sat back, breath caught somewhere between rage and revelation. I called my realtor that morning. I want to buy that house. No negotiations. Full cash offer. Fast close. She hesitated. Are you sure? You haven't even. Just get it done. 2 weeks later, I held the keys. I stood in front of the willow tree, taller now than I remembered, and stared at the blue porch. The paint was chipped. The shutters creaked in the wind. But it was his. Had been his. Now it was mine. I didn't laugh. Didn't cheer. I just stood there, heavy with something deeper than satisfaction. A strange, aching kind of peace. Inside, the house still smelled faintly of cigar smoke and old books. The carpet was worn. The living room filled with outdated furniture and forgotten pride. I wandered into the study. His desk was still there. Empty now, but haunted by the weight of its former occupant. I ran my fingers along its edge. This was the desk where he probably graded papers, dismissed potential, judged dreams too big for his narrow mind. And now it belonged to the dreamer he dismissed. That night, I stood on the porch, staring out at the quiet street. My mother sat inside sipping tea. She hadn't said much when I told her. Just smiled. You've come full circle, she whispered. But I didn't feel finished. Not yet. The mailbox still had his name etched on it, Carter. I pried it off slowly, carefully, holding it in my hands like a relic. Then I whispered to the wind. This space is mine now. And for the first time in years, I felt free. Not because I'd won, but because I'd finally let go of needing to. The house echoed in ways no apartment ever had. At night, the wind rattled the windows, and the old pipes groaned like a house remembering voices long silenced. I'd moved in officially a week ago. The furniture was gone, sold or trashed, but the presence of its old owner lingered like smoke trapped in the walls. It was a strange thing, living inside the life of the man who once made me feel small enough to disappear. I didn't touch the study for days. Every other room had been aired, scrubbed, painted. But not that one. Something about it felt sacred. Not in a holy way, but in the way ruins feel. Historical. Untouched. One morning, I finally stepped inside, sunlight casting long lines across the worn rug. I pulled up the blinds, let the light flood in. There, in the corner, was the same desk, still covered in a layer of dust, forgotten paperclips, and a cracked leather blotter. I pulled the chair back and sat down slowly. My fingers ran across the grooves where elbows must have rested through years of grading, judging, dismissing. I opened the drawers. Pens, a rusted compass, half a pack of cigarettes, yellowing index cards with faded red ink. Then something caught my eye. A loose floorboard under the desk. Subtle, but warped just enough to be suspicious. I pried it gently. Underneath was a dusty shoebox. Taped shut, sealed in time. My heart thudded. It felt like trespassing, but this was mine now. Everything inside these walls was mine. I opened it. Letters. Dozens of them. Old envelopes. Some torn, some still sealed. All addressed to Mr. David Carter. They weren't bills or spam. These were handwritten. Messy cursive. Block letters. Faded ink. They were from students. I pulled out the first one. Mr. Carter. You probably don't remember me, but I wanted to thank you. I hated you during high school, but now I realize you were the only one who pushed me to try harder. Another. Your class made me feel like I'd never be good enough. I guess in a weird way, that made me fight harder. I'm now a nurse. Just wanted you to know. And then another. You said I'd never make it in writing. But last week, my book hit the bestseller list. So thanks, I guess. I kept reading. Letter after letter from kids like me. Some thanking him. Others forgiving. A few cursing him out with brutal honesty. But all of them, in some twisted way, had carried him with them. And that's when it hit me. He hadn't kept these letters to bask in pride. He'd hidden them. He couldn't face them. He wasn't proud. He was haunted. That night, I couldn't sleep. The image of the box sat with me in the dark like an open wound. I'd spent so long chasing vengeance, success, ownership. But now, I didn't know what I felt. Relief? Maybe. Confusion? Definitely. All those years I'd imagined him smug in this house, sipping coffee and laughing at his old students. What if he wasn't? What if he wasn't laughing at all? What if he regretted it? I decided to find out. Finding David Carter wasn't hard. A quick online search revealed a recent property record. A small one-bedroom apartment rented under his name, just 2 towns over. No social media. No recent photos. But a listed phone number on a realtor's intake form. I called. Let it ring twice before hanging up. Why was I even doing this? I owed him nothing. But maybe. I needed something from him. Not revenge. Not even an apology. Just the truth. I waited 2 days. Then I drove. The complex was nothing like the house on Redwood Lane. No willow trees. No porches. Just a flat gray building with narrow windows and cracked sidewalks. I knocked on his door. Silence. Then shuffling. The door creaked open slowly. There he was. Older, of course. Thinner. His gray hair had faded almost white. He wore a cardigan 2 sizes too big, and his eyes, once sharp and dismissive, were clouded. He squinted at me. Can I help you? I swallowed hard. Mr. Carter? Yes. I'm Alex Rivera. The name sat between us like fog. I used to be your student. Millbrook High. Class of 2013. He blinked. I don't remember. I didn't expect him to. Not really. But it still hurt. I nodded. That's okay. I bought your old house. He looked startled. My house. On Redwood. The one with the willow. Silence. He looked at me longer now. Studying. Searching his mind. Then, like a slow-moving wave, recognition. Oh, he said. You were the kid with the big ideas. I smiled, just barely. That was me. He nodded again, weaker this time. His hand rested on the doorframe, shaking slightly. You told me I'd never be anything, I said, voice low. His lips parted. He didn't deny it. Instead he whispered, I'm sorry. It was quiet. Frayed at the edges. But real. I waited. He looked at the ground. I wasn't a good teacher, he said finally. Not the way people needed. I was bitter. Angry. Life hadn't turned out the way I thought, and I took it out on all of you. I stood frozen. This wasn't how I pictured it. No mockery. No fight. Just a tired man standing in a doorway full of ghosts. I found the letters, I said. His eyes closed for a long second, then opened slowly. I couldn't throw them away. I didn't write one. I admitted. I couldn't. You did now, he said softly. There was a pause. Then he stepped aside. Would you like some tea? I hesitated. Then nodded. We sat in his tiny kitchen. The kettle screamed as the world held its breath. We didn't talk about school. Or grades. Or past cruelties. He asked what I did now. I told him about FlexiLoop. The other businesses. My mother's health. My first book coming soon. He listened. And when I finished, he looked at me with eyes far softer than I remembered. You became something, he said. You did it. I had to. I whispered. You left me no choice. He nodded. Sometimes the world makes diamonds by crushing coal. I smiled. Even if the pressure is cruelty? He sighed. Especially then. When I left, he stood in the doorway again. I'm glad you came, he said. I didn't come for you, I replied. I came for me. He nodded. Then I'm glad either way. I turned to leave, but paused. You should write back to those kids, I said. They need it. Maybe you do too. He didn't answer. Just watched me go. That night, back in the study, I pulled out a fresh sheet of paper. For the first time in years, I wrote a letter. To him. But this time, not as a kid begging for approval. Or a man chasing revenge. But as someone finally free. Mr. Carter. You were wrong about me. But maybe I was wrong about you too. We both lost something back then. You your hope. Me my belief in people. Maybe today we both got a little of it back. I hope you find peace. I found mine. Alex Rivera. I folded the letter. Slipped it into an envelope. Then tucked it back inside the shoebox with the others. Let it rest. Let him rest. Let me rest. The war was over. And for the first time, I didn't need to win. I already had. The lights dimmed. My heart pounded louder than the music that played overhead. Somewhere behind the curtains, I could hear the crowd settling into their seats. The rustling of programs, the hush of whispers, the hum of 1,000 expectations. The invitation had arrived 3 months ago. Dear Mr. Alex Rivera, we are proud to honor you as the keynote speaker for the Millbrook High Centennial Celebration. Asterisk asterisk. I read it twice, maybe more. For a long time, I didn't know what to feel. This school had been a battlefield. A place where dreams were crushed under the weight of sarcasm and indifference. But now here I was, invited back not as a student, not as a statistic, but as a success. I almost said no. But something deep inside whispered that the story wasn't finished. Are you nervous? Melissa asked, adjusting my tie backstage. I nodded, smiling softly. You have no idea. She smoothed the fabric of my jacket, her touch calming the storm inside me. You've spoken in boardrooms, at investor summits, even at Stanford, she reminded me. This is just a gym full of teenagers and teachers. Exactly, I said. Teenagers and teachers. They remember the old me. Then show them the new you. The auditorium hadn't changed much. Same yellowed lights. Same dusty blue curtains. But the faces were different. Students filled the front rows, some whispering, others scrolling on their phones. Behind them sat teachers, some old, some new. A few faces I recognized, grayer now, slower. And in the center row, next to the superintendent, sat him. Mr. Carter. His cardigan looked newer, his eyes clearer than the last time we met. He nodded once when our eyes met. I nodded back. The MC cleared her throat. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our distinguished guest, entrepreneur, author, and proud alum, Alex Rivera. Applause. I stepped onto the stage. For a moment, I just stood there. Let the silence wrap around me. Let the ghosts stir in the shadows of my memory. Then I took a breath. Good evening, I began. I want to tell you a story. Not about my company. Not about the millions we've raised. Not even about the house I recently bought. Some chuckles. A few glances. No, I want to tell you a story about failure. And pain. And how it shapes us. I scanned the crowd. Because once upon a time, I sat right there. In the third row from the back. Hoodie pulled over my head. Backpack held like a shield. Hoping nobody noticed me. A few students looked at each other. One boy folded his arms. I saw myself in him. I was a dreamer. I had wild ideas. I wanted to build things, invent things, start something from nothing. But every time I raised my hand, I felt smaller. Every time I turned in an assignment, I expected disappointment. I paused. Let the air settle. One day, a teacher told me I'd never be anything. He didn't yell. He didn't scream. He just said it like a fact. Like the weather. More silence. The tension thickened. I went home that day and didn't eat. Didn't speak. Just stared at my ceiling, wondering if he was right. A girl in the front wiped her eyes. A boy next to her leaned forward. But here's what I learned. Failure isn't permanent. Pain isn't prophecy. Someone else's opinion doesn't have to become your identity. Now they were listening. Really listening. I worked nights. I studied when others partied. I taught myself code in a basement that flooded every spring. I sold my first product from a phone with a cracked screen. And last year, I took another breath. Last year, I bought the house where that teacher lived. Gasps. Laughter. Even the staff looked at each other. I didn't buy it out of revenge. I bought it because I needed to face the past. To stand inside the place where doubt once lived. And show it what belief looks like. Applause erupted. I raised my hand gently. But that's not the end. The room quieted again. You see, I visited that teacher. Not to gloat. But to understand. And what I found wasn't a monster. It was a man. Tired. Regretful. And human. More silence. A teacher in the second row lowered her head. We all carry pain. Some inflict it. Some absorb it. But we don't have to pass it on. I stepped closer to the edge of the stage. To the students here tonight. Your worth is not determined by grades, popularity, or the clothes you wear. Your dreams are not childish. They are foundations, blueprints. And every time someone tells you to be realistic, remember, airplanes were once ridiculous too. Laughter again. A few cheers. And to the teachers, thank you. For staying. For caring. For showing up, even when the world doesn't appreciate you. But please, never underestimate the weight of your words. They can build. Or they can bury. Now even the teachers clapped. I turned toward Mr. Carter. Our eyes met again. His face unreadable. But he stood. Slowly. Gently. And began to clap. Alone. Then another stood. Then another. Soon the entire auditorium rose. A standing ovation. I felt something break inside me. Not pain. Not sadness. But release. The past let go of me. And I let go of it. After the ceremony, students surrounded me, asking questions, taking selfies, telling me their dreams, coding, animation, writing, even fashion design. You think I can do it? One girl asked, nervously twisting her braid. Absolutely, I said. But don't ask me. Ask yourself every morning. And don't stop until the answer is yes. Mr. Carter waited until the crowd thinned. He walked over slowly, cane tapping rhythmically. You've grown, he said simply. I had to, I replied. He nodded. I've been writing letters to the old students. Good, I said. They'll want to hear from you. He pulled something from his pocket. A small photograph. Faded. Torn at the edges. It was me. 17. Hair a mess. Backpack slung over one shoulder. Caught mid-laugh on field day. I kept this, he said. You looked happy. I always hoped you'd stay that way. I took the photo, overwhelmed. Thank you. He nodded. I still have your letter. The one you wrote after our last talk. Did it help? I asked. Every day. We stood in silence for a while. Then he turned to leave. I'm proud of you, he said without looking back. I closed my eyes. That was the final key in the lock. Months passed. The speech went viral. Emails poured in. Interview requests. Schools asking me to speak. Students asking for guidance. But one message stood out. A boy named Malik. 17. I saw your video. I'm failing math. My teacher says I'm lazy. But I'm trying. I swear I am. How do I keep going? I wrote back. Malik, your story is still being written. Don't hand the pen to someone else. You've got this. Alex. One afternoon, I returned to the house on Redwood Lane. Alone. The study was quiet. Clean. I opened the window. Let the breeze in. Sat at the desk. And began writing a new book. Title: The House I Bought. First line. Once upon a time, someone told me I'd never be anything. So I became everything I needed to be. Not for revenge. Not for pride. For every kid who ever felt invisible. For every dream that almost died. And for the little boy in the third row from the back, who once thought the world had no place for him. He was wrong. I found my place. And now, I build them for others.